Welcome to the Western Bell podcast series, with talks on traditional spiritual teaching and its application in the world today. The intention of this series is to offer something useful for those who are drawn to study themselves and engage practice on the spiritual path. New talks are posted twice each month. The content of the talks is for informational purposes only and not to provide any kind of counseling, medical, or professional advice. This podcast is titled, My Interviews with Sisyphus. The talk was given by Tom Lennon on August 17, 2024 via Zoom. Tom is a retired cultural resource consultant who leads groups with the intention of supporting the spiritual process in others. In this talk, he states that the mythic image of Sisyphus, of a muscular man pushing a rock up a hill for eternity, represents something that needs to be known in us. He discusses his inner world conversations, or interviews with Sisyphus, based on questions evoked in him over years by the image. Tom describes surprising exchanges that occur between them, and the communication that opening to an unknown quality of life, to the path beyond self, is not reached by thinking. He says that the Sisyphus story, and Camus' writing about it, can only offer so much insight into the human condition, and that resolving our own personal story requires an inner necessity that won't leave us alone, a courageous intention to look into our own lives as opposed to looking to others for answers. If there is benefit in this talk for you, please consider sharing the link to it or writing a review on social media or on one of the podcast platforms. Tom Lennon.
I would have guessed that nobody's interested in this topic. Who's interested in Sisyphus? And here we are.
Apparently you were mistaken.
Yeah, it's good to be mistaken. At the end of many of these interviews, I summarize the issues that Sisyphus has brought to me. I don't offer any resolution. I just offer where I'm at. So what I'm going to do is, when there is an exchange with Sisyphus and me, I'm going to read exactly the way I wrote it in my notes. And my notes are cumulative, everybody. This has been going on for the last couple of years, and I finally put it together into 5 interviews. But it's cumulative, and it's the best I can do right now. And so as I summarize my impressions, it might be an opportunity for anybody who wants to pick up on whatever this exchange is, and we'll go from there. So one of the things that goes on in my life that I am at the effect of, and it's quite powerful and mysterious, is poetry. And I don't know anything about poetry, but certain poetry just takes me away. And I've learned to call it being taken off the page. Forget the words, something else is going on. And then I get back to my regular life, which is full of habits and getting lost and forgetting and all this kind of stuff. Yesterday, I'm poking around at some poetry place, and I'd like to start off with this poem because I think the mood of it is contextual to what's about to happen, okay? And so this is a poem by a gentleman who passed in 2019. His name is Les Murray. The title is imposing. The Meaning of Existence. Most of the time, I'd avoid the hell out of this kind of stuff, but I managed to read the words before I read the title. So here it goes. Everything except language knows the meaning of existence. Trees, planets, rivers, time know nothing else. They express it moment by moment as the universe. Even this fool of a body lives it in part and would have full dignity within it, but for the ignorant freedom of my talking mind. But for the ignorant freedom of my talking mind. Well, this is a hell of an introduction contextually to my engagement with Sisyphus, because a lot of what he attempts to bring to my attention has to do with my talking mind. So here I go. And I'd like to say, welcome everyone. I am blown away, everybody being here. And so I say welcome. And the purpose of this talk is like for me to explore out loud what's been going on in what's turned out to be an exploration. One of the things that Sisyphus keeps saying to me is something along the lines of explore your life, not my life, not Sisyphus's life. Okay. So this is what this is about. And for those of you who may be interested in this or have tales to tell because of your own myth, your own story, this is open. There's 5 interviews. The first 2 are rather short, last couple are a little bit longer. So the Sisyphus background in a nutshell. Here's the image of Sisyphus that most people, if you know anything about Sisyphus, it all comes from this icon. There it is, everybody. Note well the muscled masculine physique, the angle of repose of the rock, the size, etc., etc. You don't have to think much about this to get it. This is the image of Sisyphus. And I don't know anything about Sisyphus. I don't know anything about myths. I'm not really interested in mythology, like a lot of people get a lot of good stuff out of it. But I'm, for some reason, drawn into this because this image got stuck in me. And I remember that Sisyphus got stuck with the rock because he screwed over a lot of important people. If you want to know more, you go online and God, there are people who are interested in the entire lineage of who Sisyphus screwed over. It goes on, and the guy did some really nasty stuff. So he's doing that for a reason. That's what I get. That's the basic story. So what's my story? Basically, I have this question: what the hell is this image doing in my life? Why does it keep coming up all the time? And part of the background is it keeps coming up because I'm about to be 78 years old. And there's something about the aging process that I have avoided paying attention to. Not that my body isn't trying to tell me something, but my mind is really elsewhere. There's a big trail outside of my house here. And for years, when I was younger, I used to run up the trail, up the hill, over the hill, down the, I used to run. And I wish I could say I ran like the wind, but I didn't. I ran, though, to the best of my ability. But over time and over years, that running up the hill turned into jogging up the hill. If you can imagine, everybody, aging process. Oh, and then it turned into walking fast up the hill. No problem. But then somewhere around 75 or somewhere in the 70s, but most importantly, in the last couple of years when the Sisyphus thing started, I began trudging up the hill. I began pushing myself up the hill. I began wondering what I'm doing here. What am I doing up this hill? And this image just kept coming up. You know, I don't have the image of a muscled Tom Lennon pushing a giant rock. I have a weak 70-something-year-old Tom Lennon demanding that my body move up the hill, okay? So this has been going on. And so this daily effort became more and more stressful. And so I wonder, what the hell's going on with me? And so the big identification I had was, I kind of know what Sisyphus is feeling. Little did I realize that was quite an assumption. But at the time, and for many weeks, it was just like, God, that guy's busting his ass and somehow he's doing it. And what am I doing? You know, some days I can make it up the hill and push myself. Other days it's like harder, harder. And one day I'm halfway up the hill and I say to myself, is halfway good enough? Is halfway up the hill okay? Would Sisyphus go halfway up the hill? Did he ever go halfway up the hill? Can I turn back? Is that okay? And there's something in me saying I gotta go. And there's another thing like, maybe they're going to find your dead body halfway up the hill, something like that. So as I ask this question, is halfway good enough? Poof. There's a number of poofs in this thing, by the way, POOF in English. Poof. This persona, this person, Sisyphus, shows up in an instant. And he shocks me by saying, "Leave me alone. Go away." Poof. That was our first interview. I ask a question. He comes in and goes, "Well, leave me alone." It makes me afraid. Maybe I am really getting old. There's voices now showing up. And you know what I did? I left him alone for a long time. Life is hard enough without invoking the presence of voices from somewhere else. So I took his advice. I left him alone. My walks up the hill were every day intense and intense. And over the time that I left him alone, I kept having this image that Sisyphus keeps doing this. How does he do this over and over and over again? I ask, what motivates him every day? There gotta be something here. And by the way, is this all he does? I mean, because I have other things I gotta do, just not push the damn body up the hill. And so I keep going up the hill this way with questions like this. Many weeks go by, and I come up with another question. Do I have to struggle like this? Halfway up wasn't good enough, and now I'm wondering about the whole struggle. Do I have to struggle like this? Poof. Once again, he shows up. He says, "About time you broke through that." About time you broke through that. And I'm going like, broke through what? That starts the second interview. So I'm going to read this interview. He says, "I'm not going to explain anything to you. You're responsible for your own experience, your real feelings. You're sensing the difficulty of what you're doing, the mire you are in with repetitive, unrelenting thinking." Uh-oh. He says, "This can be useful." All right. I say, "Well, I was thinking that it might be better not to be thinking so much as I walk. I've been thinking for a long time about the increasing effort I need to get up the hill. I keep needing more energy to pull myself up the hill. Every day, the same struggle with the hill. Every day, it feels so Sisyphusian to me." Oh, he jumps in. "Your life is now Sisyphusian?" he says. "Please, don't drag me into your life story. I hear enough of this," he says. Actually, more and more references these days to the image of Sisyphus, his plight, his dilemma, serving as a jumping off point for considering, the larger questions of one's life, about one's existence, the why of life, as it is interpreted through that icon, through that image. People actually think I look like that, he says. Listen, leave me out of it. I only commented to you this time because you had a real breakthrough. Whether you know it or not, you felt the shock of yourself as you are halfway to nowhere. Oh my God. He says, you do not need the Sisyphus story to be part of that experience. Use that actual experience, the feeling of it, not the thinking of it, to explore something different from what your thinking does to your life. Oh my God. Actually, he says, you don't need to leave me alone. I'm alone in a way you cannot perceive. You see the image of a man, a rock, a hill, which you identify with based on your thinking, based on your upbringing. Is all that real? I put myself here. I put myself here now. Yet there are those who think that they did this, made me conform, keep watching me to make sure I am doing the same things over and over and over. I'm supposedly stuck by laws mandated by gods. So much thinking about thinking. He's on a roll, everybody. He continues, I really don't have any interest in your questions or your dilemma. You need to find out something real about yourself, about your life experience. Hey, let me be alone. And you go be alone with yourself. Go find yourself instead of trying to find me. I repeat, I am not responsible for your life story. Oof. He goes away. I mean, this is a shock. This is way too much. And I asked myself, why did he have to say so much? What I said was pretty simple, and I'm really feeling this. So I have these impressions afterwards as I keep walking, and I'm walking up the hill. The image, the icon is still there. Here's what is bugging me now. Sisyphus is saying he's alone, and he put himself there. But that's against the myth. The myth is that the gods put him there. Okay? So when I say, hey, I'm not alone, I got family and friends, and what the hell's he talking about? And then he comes up with, go find yourself. And I don't know what he means. Go find myself instead of trying to find him. And as you can tell, part of my needing to find him is about, I know he has the answers to something really important, and he ought to be talking to me. Go find yourself. I thought that's what I'm doing by talking to him. Next thing is thinking and thinking about thinking. What the heck is that about? How do I consider my life without thinking about my life? I mean, this is really getting confusing, everybody. Sisyphus is talking to me, but it's seeming like it's a big riddle now. The stress and tension in my life as I walk up my hill continues. I continue to push myself up the hill. My questions continue. Do I have to struggle? That's from the first interview where he told me to get lost. Now I say, this is too much. What do I really know about this guy? He's talking to me. What is Sisyphus to me? Do I really know anything about Sisyphus? What's true? And everybody now, as I'm walking up my hill day after day with this iconic image that won't go away, I say, hey, maybe Sisyphus is getting what he deserves. Maybe there is such thing as divine justice, and he screwed over a lot of people and hurt a lot of people, and maybe this is just the way it ought to be. This is my thinking. Maybe the story is as simple as it's supposed to be, a little moral tale. Then I think, maybe this is the kind of justice waiting for me, waiting for everybody. We're all going to get what we deserve. It sounds like something I was brought up with. If you're bad, you're going to get it forever, or you're going to go to hell. And are we subject to the same justice, putting Sisyphus up the hill all the time? And then I mentioned, maybe this is good. Maybe people are learning something about this. Maybe this morality, this icon is good for something. And the problem with thinking about what's good for me is his rock is so gigantic, and you need lots of muscles, everybody, and apparently a masculine body to do this kind of work. So I begin to ask myself as I'm struggling up the hill, if this is so, if there's such justice in the universe, what rock am I pushing up the hill? Really, what is this struggle about? So I'm now putting together, do I have to struggle? And I'm wondering, what's the weight of the struggle? What am I pushing? I thought it was my body. What rock am I pushing? And I say it this way, up this puny hill of mine. My hill is a little hill. It's not this gigantic thing. So here's what happens, as you can imagine, preceded by a poof. He shows up again. My notes say, he's back. Sisyphus says, okay, now you have a real question. Now, how do you make use of this question? He asks. Remember, my question is, what rock am I pushing up this hill? How do you make use of this question? By the way, where does the question come from? How do you engage your question? I say, trying to get off the hot seat here, hey, tell me about your rock, the rock you're pushing up that hill. And he says, Ah, you're avoiding the question, avoiding something in yourself now. So I won't tell you about, in quotes, my rock, about my hill. You really need to stop and listen to yourself. Get beyond your thinking. Get over yourself. Stop bringing Sisyphus into your need for answers. Oh, man. You ask a real question of yourself. Now you get to explore that. Well, I say defensively, how did you explore your rock up your hill? And he goes, same response. Leave Sisyphus out of your exploration of your own experience. What experiences might be beyond your constant thinking? I mean, imagine that, which I do later on, but when I'm reading this, what experiences might be beyond your constant thinking? Lawfully, he says, I am called to respond to certain experiences only when it will serve a greater purpose. Oh boy, this is getting heavy. That is all I can offer to you now. So I have responded and will leave you. I go, no, wait a minute. Don't go away. I need your help. Sisyphus says, wait a minute. I don't go away. You keep going away. You can't actually feel anything without thinking about how you feel. I just offered you all the help you need at this time. I say, yeah, but stop, he says. It's bad enough that somehow I can hear these thoughts, but it has to stop. Can't you stop this talk based on your thinking? I say defensively, you can help me. I think you're a force for good. I throw that out. He interrupts because I had more to say about that. What is with you? You're certainly a model for habitual humanity, he throws at me. He says, so now you're fishing around about what's good about Sisyphus, like you actually know something about that. Really? I want you to get this Sisyphus you have created out of your mind, out of your non-stop thinking. Listen, you don't know what good means, and it would be good for you to understand this. I say, wait a minute. He says, I'm not waiting for you. Poof. That was the third interview. I call them interviews, everybody, but it's more like a talking to from him to me. So this left me with even more questions piled upon the previous questions. So here's what I'm coming to. He's not offering me any help. I'm asking for help, everybody. You know that. Honestly asking for help from Sisyphus. All he can tell me is to get over myself. And I'm thinking, how do I get over myself without getting the help I'm asking for? I'm getting confused. But now he's invoking a law. And I'm thinking, do I really need to know that there's a law? That he can only show up when there's some need for him to serve a greater purpose? And listen, I want everybody to know, I know what good is because I was raised to know what bad is. You know what I mean? 13 years of Catholic nuns training me. I know what bad is. I may not know that much about good, but I know bad. So as a reflection, I know something about good. And I really didn't like the way he talked to me like that. Like, I can't understand basic stuff like this. I think based on the last two interviews, maybe I don't want to do this. Maybe I had enough of Sisyphus. You know what I mean? I'm done with this. Maybe I don't want or need to explore my life based on what Sisyphus calls habitual thinking. Just seems like it's just too much. So I tell myself, I really need to know more about Sisyphus. What is this guy up to? What's the truth? Everybody, do you know the truth about Sisyphus? I'm asking myself, I know the rock, it's a really steep hill over 45 degrees, I guess. It's a big rock. He screwed around with a lot of people. I'm wondering about my puny little rock. I'm assuming it's a puny little rock, but I don't want to have to deal with it for eternity. And so I need to know this guy, what's he doing in my life? That's what I really want to know. So this begins a serious review of all I can find about Sisyphus, okay? Because I need some data. I don't necessarily want to continue with this. So I'd like to briefly summarize the data in case anybody out there needs to know more. Over weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, I'm just going to give you the topics I dealt with. The main thing is Camus, Albert Camus, the French philosopher who wrote the 3-page essay that is essential for all you existentialists out there. It's called Camus, The Myth of Sisyphus. It really is worth studying. I followed that up by reading one of Camus' students' essay on Albert Camus and the meaning of life, faith, and absurdity. Oh, that was full of stuff. Next, I danced through Wikipedia, dove into Psychology Today, why Sisyphus's punishment differs from the human condition. Oh, man. I read that title and I thought, this one's for me. Now somebody's actually using this, you know? I thought it would resolve everything for me. You'll see what happens in the next couple of interviews. And here's one, The Truth About Life, Lessons from the Myth of Sisyphus. The truth. Now I'm getting somewhere, I think. Sisyphus doesn't know anything about the human condition. Somebody's telling the truth. Here's one, The Myth of Sisyphus, Find Joy in Existence. Camus explained. Oh, yeah. If there was a Camus 101 or Camus for idiots, yeah, okay. Then I keep looking in the internet and I realize, wait a minute, there is something going on, maybe with the younger generation. There's an entire commercial production going on about Sisyphus. It's taken the form of T-shirts, everybody. T-shirts with expressions from Camus and existential philosophers about Sisyphus. Here's some of the expressions on these T-shirts. This is what's going on, really, right now. One is, that's just how I roll. It's another one. This is basic Camus. One must imagine Sisyphus happy. That's the essence of Camus and the jumping off point for everybody. Another is, embrace the absolute. Oh, God. Another one, what would Sisyphus do? Another one, Sisyphus Fitness, open 24 hours a day for eternity. Here's another one, endure the weight of existence. Can you imagine wearing a T-shirt that says endure the weight of existence? Here's another one, another T-shirt, another great day, with this image on it. There's so many more, but the last one I wrote down was living the dream. And I concluded my reading and then I went back and studied all this. But the last thing I ran into was Carl Jung, his happiness as a consideration, because I had to figure out more of what's this thing about it? Is he happy? What's Camus' version of happy? And well, all of a sudden, all this Carl Jung stuff shows up about happy. And somebody writes about Carl Jung's 5 pillars of a good life, all tied into happiness. And then there's a whole section of Carl Jung's quotes on happiness. I had to stop because this could go on forever, one thing leading to the next. I stopped with this New York Times article that said, are we happy yet? Are we happy? And it's like, enough already. But I checked into what's going on out there electronically. And I say to myself this, there's so much thinking, so much writing, so much interest in what people think about Sisyphus. This attention, people are making use of this. So the fact that I can't engage the guy that's bringing all this usefulness means that maybe this is not a source for me. I'm walking up the hill more and more, you guys. Every day I'm walking up the hill, not engaging. Then one day I summarize where I'm at. I say out loud to myself as I'm walking, based on my reading, it does seem, Sisyphus, that you may have helped a lot of people based on your life experience and a story. And as a result, they may have looked at themselves in a different way just because of this image. They're wearing t-shirts. Something's going on here, right? Philosophers are writing, psychologists are writing, people are trying to be happy, wondering if Sisyphus is happy. And you know what happens next. Oof, out of the blue. He jumps in saying, listen to this, reading can only get you so far. And right away, it's, man, it's like the rug keeps getting pulled out from underneath me as I try to get some foundational connection with this guy. He says, you are all in your head, reading and thinking and reading. You're waiting for some insight, expecting or hoping for some connection from above or from Camus or others, all possibly coming with a simple solution for your life as it is. Listen, he says, on the upside of things, you're not a loser. You are just lost. You need to find yourself, he goes on. Find where you are and go from there. You need to find out how to find yourself. You might ask yourself. He takes a breath. First, you need to get out of your focus on Sisyphus. The effort is stagnant. Man, do I agree. I'm right there with him right now. Except he says, just more habituated thinking. To you, the image of Sisyphus is all about the man, the myth, the rock. It would be useful for you to consider, actually to feel the presence of what you are so identified with. Man, he's really sticking it to me. That which you cannot see or feel, that is, your world, your hill, your rock, whatever all that may represent to you, not what you interpret to be Sisyphus's effort, Sisyphus's history, world, hill. You literally and figuratively have all your own. He goes on, I am not the icon, not the way to resolve your own personal story. Can you get over yourself? Will you ever? Oh my God. Are you willing to actually make the effort? Now, you might say, enough already, right? I might say that to myself, but he goes on. He's plugged in. You're looking for answers to questions that simply keep you engaged in maintaining and manipulating your current relationship, your story about you, your experience of your life. You keep doing this. How many times now? You keep trying to get me to help you, to be your answer, to relieve you of some burden that you don't want to feel. Oh, man, you don't want to be with this burden. Gosh, he goes on. To be clear, I only communicate, if ever, through contact initiated and sustained in the world beyond words. Don't you get it? I have to repeat this. He says to me, I only communicate, if ever, through contact initiated and sustained in the world beyond words. Don't you get it? My notes say, I'm getting emotional. I'm now really tense. I'm impatient. I'm not listening to him. Well, I'm feeling something, and I'm compelled to say, of course I'm willing to make an effort. I'm reading a lot about you and how people work with your story and image. I need to know more about you. How did you shift from your history of abuse of others to your state of acceptance of your life? Did you not have feelings and regrets and remorse and anger? Of course, I say this with a little bit of anger. He simply just sidesteps all that. He says, I don't have a story. I don't have an image. That's all made up by others. It's their story. You fail to understand that Sisyphus as story is simply another aspect of your own illusions, your own mechanical habit life. As a reflection of that, the Sisyphus story can only offer so much in terms of insight into the human condition as people wish to explore. Oh man, he goes on. To go beyond that would require an inner necessity, a courageous intention to explore your own life's framework. Oh man, are you kidding? It is that illusory construction which keeps you separate, identified with yourself. I mean, I can't believe that he's laying this on me. It's too much, but I don't interrupt him. He goes on. I think he's trying to help me with the fact that I'm studying about Sisyphus instead of experiencing things. For some, the image and story of Sisyphus is simply a means for many to reflect on life's moral issues. For others, Sisyphus is a metaphor demanding unfulfilling lives. For others, Sisyphus may be the point from which they muse about the meaning of life in the universe. And so it goes. I think you are taken by all of these characterizations, yet I sense some other possibility in your continued interest, so I will offer you a bit more. So he senses something in me, finally. Per this myth, he says, Sisyphus is required to roll the rock for eternity. People are afraid of this aspect of the myth, eternity and what it may imply, eternity as punishment, which may bring up another possible consideration, he says. For you, is there a distinction between the present and eternity? Do you know or have real experiences in the present? How about with eternity? The non-story Sisyphus is not concerned with eternity. It does not exist for Sisyphus. There is only doing what needs to be done, here and now, always present under the universal influence. So Sisyphus goes up the hill, pushing the rock. Yes, much supposed effort, yet without reference to it beyond right now. Downhill also calls for continued attention. Momentum takes the rock down the hill. Inner momentum keeps me on my path. Up or down is not relevant in the present, simply the presence of attention on what is needed. He then says, have I said enough? Have I entertained your intellect, your need to know enough by now? So I say something really honest. I say, I am so confused. I tend to think the myth about you is based on your life in human form, prior to myth status, prior to being held as a transcendent figure, a la Camus' essay. You know, you're going from bad to being good, to being happy. He comes in with a big sigh. You are so, what's the word? You're so binary. That's what he says to me. You're so binary. It's either this or that, good or bad, happy or... He said, I thought you'd try to drag me into this whole existentialist dilemma thing. Listen, this is why I prefer people talk and write about Sisyphus, whether that is useful or not, rather than try to talk with me. Most of the talking and writing about me is yet another escape from the need to honestly and responsibly engage oneself. Engage, explore the age-old questions of, who am I? What am I doing here? I know that this may be taken as cliche or trite, yet those pieces you read can be simply more ways of avoiding the actual sensation of what is real, of feeling the unknown beyond the habitual preoccupation with me. That is, living a life based on a known past, projecting life into a wished-for future. Sisyphus goes on and says, Sisyphus, in some deep way, represents something that needs to be known in you. I get it. You don't. So I must now leave you with an essential question. What got you here now? Or better yet, are you actually here now? He says, don't think about it. Have a nice walk. Poof. Well, as you can imagine, folks, that led to many, many, many weeks of walking up my hill, wondering about the cumulative effect of all these questions. The impressions from this download from Sisyphus are, for me, I'm now feeling lost. He's making me feel lost. And instead of helping me find myself, he's telling me to go find myself. I mean, what's this about? He's telling me that he's not the answer to my personal dilemma. I say to myself, what are myths for, if not to resolve personal dilemmas? Come on. Do you ever think about that? I'm engaging one, but he's no help, direct help. Next thing, I'm still making this intense effort to go up the hill, and I say, I am committed to making a daily effort to walk up the hill, push myself beyond resistance. Am I not getting over myself every time I do that? He's saying, get over my, it gets me back to the second time he talked with me. What's this struggle all about? And forget about eternity and the present, by the way. How could I possibly understand what the hell he's talking about? I can't even get with the fact that I'm feeling more and more lost. So I keep thinking, to put it in New Yorkese, since that's where I'm from, enough already, I say to myself, enough already. I really think I've had it now. I can't force myself to consider these questions and walk up the hill all the time. It's just way too much. Everybody, I need answers now. And all right, my questions may be getting different, but I'm not getting any answers. And what do I say to myself? I go back to reading and studying what others have said, because I'm trying to find some resolution by what other people are telling me about this, because even though I have this present experience, the presence of Sisyphus at times, it's not doing me any good. And that leaves me with that damn word good. I mean, he's saying, what the hell do I know about good? Inherently, after 13 years of Catholic training, I know what's good, okay? Because I know what's bad. I know I said that before, but is this part of my dilemma? Good and bad? Oh, everybody, this gets me back to binary thinking. Is that part of the dilemma? Binary thinking. Thinking about thinking? So months go by, and of course I'm thinking about this. I'm struggling with it. I've gone back and I've really carefully read Camus. I have tried to understand the nuances, and there are nuances everywhere in what he wrote. And I haven't lost this idea that this is of great value, this myth to everybody, and particularly Camus. This jump-started all this existential philosophical stuff and man's search for whatever. One day I'm walking up the hill and I ask, Sisyphus, did you talk to Camus? Because I'm realizing they must have been talking. I can't be having this thing by myself. Other people must be talking to this guy. Did you talk to Camus? Then I say, kind of boldly, what did you say to him? Poof. My note says, in a flash, none of your business. So I infer that those guys did some talking, because it's none of my business. He goes on, that's the problem with you all, thinking. I'm not getting into that at all. We've covered this enough already. I say, wait a minute. Your image won't go away. It calls me deeper into whatever people are saying about you. Your story is relevant to many people. And he says, so what? He says, so what? And I go, what? I need your help again. He goes, you are so lost, yet you find me. Let me tell you something. I am not looking for you, yet I am feeling your real pain, and I must respond. You can't possibly understand. And it's not about that image. It's about something deeper beyond your thinking. If you could possibly imagine that. First time you did this, I got you to go away. But now you won't leave me alone because something won't leave you alone. That's it. Really, that is your business to handle. It's none of my business. Look at all you've recently learned about Sisyphus. It's all made up. Sure, some of it may be useful in a limited way, yet most of it is more wasted effort, with some people struggling to come to terms with that catchphrase, man's search for meaning. Give me a break, he says. Sisyphus's search for meaning? Really, that is only my business. Yet it seems like my business is now everyone's business. All who want to offer a professional opinion, a critical interpretation, a new t-shirt. People promote and consume these approaches in many ways. And these are serious distractions to a true consideration of life as it is. Listen, you can make the image of Sisyphus into anything you want. And nowadays, that image is all over t-shirts. Look at the sale of roll with it t-shirts. Embrace the absurd t-shirts. Or the one with Camus' quote, one must imagine Sisyphus happy. I jump in. Oh, since you mentioned the word, let me take this opportunity to ask you, and I am really pushing it here. Are you happy? Oh, please, he says. Enough already with the Camus reference, suggesting I am happy or might be happy. Maybe Camus needed to ask this question of himself, he says. Or maybe you should ask this of yourself. This really begs the question, are you happy? Do you actually know what happy is? Do you feel it? Oh, are you just thinking about happy? Listen, it's another word for you to explore, like your use of the word good. So he gets a dig in at me. I say, in defense, I don't really know what happy is. So what does it mean to you? How's that for a reply, huh? You know what he says? None of your business. You can only find out for yourself. Right now, for you, it's only a word, just a normal word used conveniently in general conversation. Means something relative to something else, to someone else. I interrupt. So, in a general sense, everyday happiness is relative to me, to my usage. I kind of throw that in. He says, now you might be getting somewhere. It's like, what? If you don't really know what happiness is, try looking into what unhappiness is. Or better yet, look into your constant references to me, myself, I. And he pushes me. I say, what do you mean? I can't get this. I cannot help you, he says. You're not the first person who has come to me looking for answers to these essential questions like, who am I? What am I? What am I doing here? Even if I did have an answer, I could never give it to you. I get it that over the years, certain types of people want to take personal advantage of Sisyphus, make Sisyphus be a lesson over and over through the ages. These are personal choices, and for the most part, never invoke my involvement. Life goes on. The universe goes on. And all I intend to do is be present and simply live with intention, which looks to some like just rolling a rock. You're all trying to make something very esoteric, something profoundly psychological, some grand need to find answers to life through Sisyphus. Listen, my experience is not your experience. This experience is simply the thought of this experience, which is where you and others are simply stuck in habitual thinking about what you're thinking. Maybe you should spend your time and energy exploring your own life sentence, not so focused on what you think is Sisyphus's eternal life sentence. He says, get over yourself. Get over your focus on Sisyphus. I really had it with this. I say, but I need to know why you keep doing this. He says, what am I doing? You're going up and down the hill all the time. What keeps you doing this? He says, I'm not doing anything. That's a thought. That's a concept controlling your own life, not mine. You are doing Sisyphus. God, I am simply living, he says, simply being with as what shows up here and now. I'm being present forever. Get it? Oh, what are you doing? Why? I say, kind of crushed now. At this point, I'm not sure. Honestly, I don't know. Don't know is a great place to start, he says. Explore your own considerations, your life's dilemma. Go find yourself. You won't find yourself by trying to engage me, by engaging images and philosophy, the comments of others. Here's a hint, by the way, that is likely way beyond your ability to use at this time. So you'll likely spend weeks and months thinking. I exist as possibility, a universal opening, an opening to an unknown quality of life beyond myth. You won't get there by thinking. Oof, he was gone, and he hasn't shown up for months. This is what he left me with. Cumulatively, something's going on because I haven't resolved any of the questions. He's just given me more considerations. So here's my impressions. There's something beyond my thinking. What did he say? I won't leave Sisyphus alone because something won't leave me alone. Well, I don't know what the hell he means. I say to myself, why just leave me hanging like this? What? Here's another one. Sisyphus doesn't search for the meaning of life. A lot of people are using Sisyphus to search for the meaning of life. And the whole existentialist thing is part of it about Camus. So is he saying that he's actually living it and not searching for it? I don't get it because he's pushing a big freaking rock up the hill, you know? Oh, but then he says, I'm living that. He's not living that. You get that? What he's saying, he's not living this. Somebody made up this image, basically, is what he's saying. It's not him. He doesn't even look like that, he says. Geez, how about happy? This whole Camus and happy thing is another question to be answered or not answered. Maybe it's just a waste of time. I'm learning more about the emphasis on exploring my life because something's going on as I'm walking up the hill. There's some exploring going on because these questions that haven't gotten digested yet. You know what I mean? They're still in the cerebral mastication phase of my life. I'm chewing on them, okay? This whole idea of not knowing as an opening is something that really got me thinking. What do I know? With all the study I did about Camus, I'm trying to know stuff about Sisyphus and then know stuff about Camus and blah, 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 blah. And my last impression is, how could I possibly know that Sisyphus is a universal opening to something beyond thought, something beyond the way I language my life? And so I end with, this is where these exchanges have taken me, through and beyond the icon, the myth, the articles, all leading me toward a listening to a deepening inner view. So the interviews are really an opening in view of myself interiorly. About what creates meanness, me, the me. I say much has been revealed about willingness to make an effort, I am learning that my habitual need to know is really a judgment about what I don't know. It's a judgment about Sisyphus. It's a judgment about me. There is an inner necessity to engage something beyond the icon. This is what's being revealed to me, beyond many icons. Sisyphus is just the lead icon that's opened up for me to look beyond the icon, beyond so many icons, many such images that hold my habit life in place. So I end with that, and I noticed that no one raised their hand, I don't think, throughout this whole presentation. I just had to read so much of what I wrote down. So the floor is open, and I thank you for your patience.
Well, a couple of impressions come up for me. One of them was that when there is real necessity, real help shows up. So Sisyphus said to you that he came back in later conversation with you when he felt your pain, when he felt a real necessity.
Right.
And I don't have that particular exploration, but I can understand from other experiences I've had that when I've had real necessity and asked for real help sincerely, that it arrives and it's lawful.
One thing that's come up for me is I don't understand how Sisyphus can be beyond thinking and still be thinking. It seems to me like he responds to what you're saying. Some kind of thought process has got to happen in his life, I would think, for him to follow what you're saying and respond to it. He's functional. What's beyond thinking seems to involve thinking, but then I'm thinking, I can't think this through. And what thinking does for me is I think it keeps me safe, like I exist. To let go of that and find what's beyond that would be the only way to understand where he's coming from.
Well, here's what I'm learning. Trying to understand is, what do they call that? The booby prize? Feeling something, experiencing something. This is what I'm getting out of this, that is beyond thinking, allows me to use words in a more refined context instead of habitually. And that's the distinction. This whole binary thing is really important for me to learn more about, because it's either this or it's that. It's either universal or it's material. It's form or it's not form. And this life is all happening in the middle. That's the way it feels to me. And so I think it's great to have questions about how can Sisyphus say, I exist as possibility, a universal opening to an unknown quality of life beyond myth. That's, to me, the path beyond self. But the only way to get there is to be with self. That just seems to be one of the conundrums of life. I'm thinking there's got to be an answer to this, like the philosopher's man's search for meaning. And what I'm getting from this is there is a sensational sense of life. It's captured by the poem I read at the beginning, I think. There's something there. I get this from certain poems I've been reading and studying for years. Something happens off the page. Something happens off the myth. Now, whether it happens or not to any individual, who the hell knows how this shows up? It just so happens it's showing up with this thing that's showing up with Sisyphus. It's happened with some poems where all of a sudden I am taken off the page. I feel I'm in and at the effect of the creative process that created the poem instead of at the effect of the words.
I had this experience of listening to you and having these little moments of going, I think I get what you're saying, but mostly following the way you were telling the stories and the interviews and so forth. I think I was more just feeling what you were pointing to. Yeah, it's like using words and using language and even using thought to be with what's actually behind it.
Yeah.
So I wonder if you might read that poem to close at the end.
Yeah.
Because I feel like it so beautifully shows that. It's not using words. It's not thinking. It's just behind that.
Yeah. Yeah.
What really struck me was when you were speaking about the binary way of thinking, when he said to you, "You're so binary." Is this the way you say it in English? Binary? Yes.
Binary.
Binary. Good, bad. We were brought up with that kind of binary thinking. Also, it's way out, perhaps, of our possibility of thinking. It's not about thinking, or it's a third or fourth dimension that we as Westerners possibly don't have.
I wanted to point out that I understand that Sisyphus is real and that his visitations to you were real. I've had that experience myself with a myth showing up and talking to me. And I really like your phrase, it takes you off the page, like poetry and music. And we surround ourselves with spiritual icons, a lot of us, or paintings or things that we have some sort of response to. And to really be able to spend time with those and allow them to speak to us, they are like portals into another reality that can teach us. And so it was really exciting to hear about the reality of Sisyphus showing up and talking to you. What I've experienced, it is my own self talking to me, but it is help being offered.
I'm glad I could do this in the animated way I did it, because that's the only way I could have done this. Okay, so I began with this poem. The poet is Les Murray. The title is The Meaning of Existence. Everything except language knows the meaning of existence. Trees, planets, rivers, time know nothing else. They express it moment by moment as the universe. Even this fool of a body lives it in part and would have full dignity within it, but for the ignorant freedom of my talking mind.